I have a hard time with this, and I feel like it's the same with social media. Is like you read this stuff and you feel seen. You're just consuming, right? Like it's not doing anything except for maybe sparking something inside you to feel validated. And I go back and forth whether or not that's helpful or not. Do I need to feel validated? Is when I read that, is that, when it reminds me of the fact that hard is good and this is part of building and I got to keep going. Is that good? Or am I just completely fooling myself into, thinking that what I'm doing is right? Welcome back to the Modern Craftsman podcast, where it's just Tyler and I today. Everyone's favorite.
Just the two of us.
Just the two. We're going to get deep today. We're going to talk about I don't know. We talk about everything. We talk about the fact that work-life balance isn't actually a thing, defining your why, understanding that, Tyler grills me with a couple hard-hitting questions that I have a very hard time answering, primarily related to my existence on this planet and what I'm actually trying to accomplish. But it starts with a great quote that Joe Christensen from Cardinal Crest shared with me, and I shared with Tyler, and I was like, man, like there's something here that like really gives me the feels. And we digest it. And
then I basically just shit on it. But
yeah, and then Tyler's like, yeah, you're just a puss, and you got to work through it.
I think that a lot of us are using hustle culture as a crutch to not work on our businesses or address some of our shortcomings, and I want to make sure that we don't get too comfortable there. But that's it.
That's it.
I appreciated the quote. I think everyone else will. I think it made for a great conversation.
Well, before we get into the quote, let's read some sponsors here. This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. If you're looking for architecturally authentic windows, look no further than Andersen A-Series product line. Designed in collaboration with architects, Andersen A-Series products are very finely tuned, clad wood windows and doors.
Their matching sight lines, matching glass setbacks, and size options will help you bring any architectural style to life down to the smallest detail. And with numerous glass options and composite exteriors, they're Andersen's best performing and most energy efficient products, capable of withstanding some of the toughest conditions.
They're a great fit for historic projects or any projects where you need to achieve an elevated look with top-tier performance. For more information, head over to andersenwindows.com/moderncraftsman. This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. Spring's here, and if your job's anything like mine, it sounds like a swarm of subcontractors and smells like sawdust and stress. Look, busy season is awesome, but it also means stuff falls through the cracks, and Buildertrend's to-do feature helps keep every task, follow-up, and oh shoot, I forgot about that moment organized.
You can assign tasks to your crew, set deadlines, and make sure nothing gets buried in a group text again. It's like a checklist, but one that actually gets used. If you're juggling 10 jobs and 47 sticky notes, it's time to level up. Go to buildertrend.com/MC demo and see how to-dos can save your sanity this season. Don't wait until you miss a slab pour. Schedule your demo now.
This podcast is also brought to you by Velux. You're always looking for ways to wow homeowners, and who doesn't want more natural light? With Velux skylights, you can transform any space by adding more natural light without sacrificing privacy.
Bring to life focal points, including the kitchen or the living room, or brighten up small spaces such as closets or bathrooms, and leave your clients speechless. Learn more at veluxusa.com/remodeler.
And you guys know we partnered with Harnish Workwear. Well, it's a brand built by the trades for the trades. Through unwavering focus, physical discipline, and devotion to mastering their craft, Harnish doesn't just make workwear, it sets a new standard for how they show up, both on and off the job. This is more than clothing, it's a commitment to a lifestyle of growth, performance, and elevated purpose.
The new H-Label line is changing the game. You get high-quality work uniforms with performance-grade fabric that moves with you, not against you. No excessive bulk, no second-guessing your brand image, just sharp, professional design backed by innovative fabric tech that protects you like a multi-layer system while wearing like a single layer. And when it comes to printing your logo, it's dialed, clean, durable, and consistent every single time. Built for the field, designed for the future, tested by the industry. Harnish. Elevate what you wear, own what you build.
For more information, head over to harnishworkwear.com. Make sure you click up top where it says partners, and you can join the Modern Craftsman and get an exclusive Modern Craftsman discount code. That's for the Creator 1 and the Pioneer 1 and the H-Label Work Spec t-shirt. Yeah, I sent this thing to you the other day. It says, this is what breaks most founders. The hardest part of building a business is not the work. It's holding yourself together when nothing is working. When the product is live, but no one is buying. When the ad budget's gone, but you still feel invisible. You question everything, your idea, your timing, your ability to figure it out. This is the moment when most people quit, not because they're lazy, but because it's lonely, it's uncertain, and it's relentless. But the truth is, every successful founder has felt this. Doesn't mean doubt doesn't mean you're wrong. It means that you're in it. And this is the part that defines success, not the talent, not the luck, not the endurance. And the founders who make it, they get back up, they learn the lesson, and they move forward. You don't have to feel confident. You just have to keep going. And remember, hard is normal. Keep building. And for what it's worth, that is a post that Founder, which is, I believe it's a publication, posted. And I sent it to Tyler. And truthfully, Joe from Cardinal Crest sent it to me. And here I am spewing everyone's dirty laundry here. But like, I know anyone that just listened to that intro knows how real that feeling is.
It's yeah, so I was trying to pull that up and I was not finding it. I think it's a really interesting perspective. And I think that so many of us struggle day to day, month to month, week to week, whatever it may be. At what point do we look at that? Like, I guess to play devil's advocate, like, is that just lip service? At what point do we start to question what we're doing? Not from just like a confidence perspective, but like, yeah, it's hard, but does it need to be this hard? Is there something wrong? Should we make a change? Is this just part of the process?
I'm with you on is it just lip service? I have a hard time with this, and I feel like it's the same with social media. Is like you read this stuff and you feel seen, and it's, you're just consuming, right? Like it's not doing anything except for maybe sparking something inside you to feel validated. And I go back and forth whether or not that's helpful or not. Like, do I need to feel validated? Is when I read that, is that, when it reminds me of the fact that hard is good and this is part of building and I got to keep going, is that good? Or am I just completely fooling myself into, thinking that what I'm doing is right?
I don't know. Coming from what we've done the past 10 years, what I did, the beginning stages of my business, and what I think that we're looking to advocate for and to help people get out from underneath. Yeah, like there's certain aspects of business that are difficult, and life is not easy. But I also think that a lot of us use mantras like this, certain beliefs, certain ideologies, lifestyles to justify what we're doing, or as a crutch that like there's no more action necessary. And I think that's where I would question this, where it's like, yeah, it is difficult, but why is it difficult? And is the answer for me just to continue to push through this and punish myself, or are there other options out there that make this not quite as painful? Because if it's painful for 5 years straight, 10 years straight, like, is that just perpetuating the whole burnout culture?
Yeah, I do wonder, like, because I feel like, especially in recent episodes and even in my Monday emails, I was thinking about this when I was writing the one yesterday, is I need to share something better, like rather than just constant struggle, constant how hard this is. Because I think it's really easy to relate to when it's tough, but a good friend of mine reached out and was like, "Hey, I appreciate what you post and I appreciate what you share, but give me a win. Give me, dude, your olives. on your
Oh,
your arm. Give me a win. Like, tell me when this all worked. Like, what was the pay? Show me the payoff.
yeah.
And I do think about that when we get on the podcast here and talk about stuff like this, because you know there's definitely this self-inflicted difficulty that put on myself. And I think I'm pretty open about the fact that I go after things that are hard and difficult, and and challenge myself with things that people say, hey, don't do that, that's too difficult, do this, it's easier. And on the flip side, it's like, you and I will talk offline about how do we make our lives easier, how do we take advantage of the opportunities that we're given, rather than continuing to try to force an opportunity into existence, when frankly maybe it's not worth it.
Well, yeah, and I think that to have that mindset and that mentality, like business is hard, life is hard, marriage is hard, choose your hard, right? Like it's all hard, but I feel that it it helps people, like it creates commiseration
Mhm.
where like people love it. They love to hear that you struggle, that everything isn't going right because they're in the same boat. And I feel what follows that is a lack of action to say, well,
Right.
everything's going through this. Everyone's going through this same thing. So just let it be. Right.
Right.
This is just
Oh,
the
it's
way it
okay.
is.
Everyone has
Yeah.
it.
Rather than like, hey, this is the case. It is hard, but what's the action item that we can provide people with so it's not quite that hard?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that that's what's important. And I think it's probably similar to people kind of hopping on the whole Gary V mindset where it's like, work, 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 sleep when you're dead. And that's great. And I think that, there's times for that, but that's not sustainable.
Hmm.
And there's a time and a place for that, but it shouldn't be every day. It shouldn't be every minute. It shouldn't be your entire life. And I feel that sometimes it's just us justifying the chaos.
Hmm.
And what type of action items. And like you said, that listener response to you, it's like, I appreciate this. A lot of people probably appreciate that because it helps justify what they're struggling with or their
Yeah.
inactions. But it's like, yeah, what can we do to help you have it not be quite as hard?
Hmm.
Um, because like it is, some days are better than others, but it shouldn't, like if it's a constant struggle day in and day out, then I think we need to start assessing the bigger picture. Like,
Yeah.
why is it this way? And I, like, for me, a lot of the guys and the girls that I speak with, it's like, hey, I'm getting pricing objections to our work. And it's like you're not making millions of dollars doing this work right now. Like something's wrong with your system if people are telling you are too expensive. And whether it's internal, whether it's market rates, whether it's just there's people willing to do it for less, you're not marketing your, like there's something fundamentally wrong with your system, where if that same person just said, this is the way it is, I have to charge less, everyone's dealing with this pricing objection in today's market. Like there's inaction there that I don't feel like is productive. Where the conversation can be like, yeah, this is what everyone's experiencing, but here are 3 things that you can do to change that, or to kind of put things into perspective or shift the tide some so that they go more in your favor. And there's things that we can control and there's things that we can't control. And I think focusing on those things that are within our control, that we can do for our business is like a really great starting point for that.
Why do you think a lot of those guys are facing pricing objections?
I personally think it's like market, because honestly, when I look at what they're charging, even if they were to charge like $300 an hour, at the end of the day, even what they are charging, say somebody's charging $100 an hour, they're not capturing 30% of their cost, and there's still pricing objection there. So to me, it's not like a rate thing. And they're still underbidding and they're still not capturing all their costs. So it's not like a big number thing. I think it's just it's market. I think there's a lot of people out there willing to do it for less. And I think that it's just undervaluing what we do in general. I think that our industry as a whole has had a tough time being able to contend and compete with like rising costs and inflation, and we're just expected to absorb a lot of them, kind of like our conversation last week. um, and people are they're not willing to see the value in what we're providing.
Yeah.
um, so personally, I think that that's it, because at the end of the day, I think that most of what we're doing should be more expensive than it actually is. We're generally leaving a lot of money and a lot of time on the table. And I think that that compounds, and I think that there's just a lot of that out there, which basically drives down the cost of most of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, it's the market comment is definitely something that's something I battle with internally constantly, where it's like, I just our 45 Widow project, which I'll talk about until that project's done and off my my radar. But that's a great example of something that's I didn't look at the market and say, all right, what's the most, you know, the common denominator behind what the market wants. I was looking at this tiny niche market and being like, all right, I'm gonna hit that market. Where it's like from a business perspective, it's like no wonder it's so difficult. It's like there's a tiny market for it, and the smaller the market, the less quote unquote guarantee it is. So it's like, you're essentially betting, an enormous chunk of your life savings on, a single number rather than, you know, taking a smaller gamble.
Well, I think that like the mindset behind that and the approach behind that is the entire niche market,
Yeah.
where it's like, hey, if you want to be able to make more than the going rate, you have to niche down. You have to
Mhm.
provide a higher level of service, a higher quality of product, and
Yeah.
experience something different. And I think that that's the right move. Like if you want to be putting a certain amount of work in place and maximizing your profit, it's through efficiency, and then it's through like offering that higher level service or product.
Hmm.
It's difficult to scale. And like I think when you
Yeah.
look at it from your perspective, it's like the amount of resources and time on the back end that you'll never be able to capture that have gone into this. Um, when you look at it from like a time and a resource investment, you could build 4 houses.
Yeah.
And then like, so there's got to be a break even point where it just, it's not the smartest use of your time. I don't know where that break even point is, but I think that moving forward, like as you continue to build and as you continue to take on projects, you have to understand like at what point is that scale tipping where it just doesn't make sense,
Hmm.
or are you positioning yourself to be able to make the money on the projects where these are just passion projects for you and you're not quite as concerned as putting a big
Yeah.
chunk of money or your life savings
On
as
red.
a gamp. Yeah, correct. And that's kind of what we're saying, where it's like, yeah, it is hard, and this project is hard, and life is hard, and money's hard. But does it need to be this hard, or are there other options to be able to do what you're doing, um, and get the results that you need without it being this hard? Like that's the conversation.
Yeah, and I think it obviously ties back to like obviously what is success for each person, right? Like the definition of success is different, and specifically where when you talk to we'll call them ultra successful people, they all say how difficult it is and the shit that they go through, and like it's just this long painful growth. And to your point, it's I think that's where I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast and a lot of people that we talk to are kind of in that. They're the entrepreneurial mindset. They want to grow. They want to be super successful. They want to build a brand. They like, et cetera, et cetera. And there's fewer, probably from a listenership. There's probably fewer people that listen that are completely okay with where they're at, and they're just listening to to listen. And they're not looking to continue to scale or grow. And I'm not saying that they have it easier or they have an easy life or it's easy for them, but I do think it is easier, in the sense that they understand like where they're at, and they can find comfort, and they can really kind of follow, like, not I guess plateau would be the right way to explain it. Like, they're plateaued, and now they're just going to continue to copy and paste what they're doing in their own world, work at their own speed, and it's not this constant moving of the goalpost, where it's like when you think about the ultra successful, that's different. Like, the goalpost always moves. It's always changing. There's always resistance. They're constantly putting out fires. And I think that's what the founder post was really about, is it's the willingness and the ability to endure that, where it's just this constant, pushback that you have to fight through.
Well, I think that most people who have that mindset and that like true entrepreneurial spirit, they're never satisfied with what they're doing, which is going to lead to burnout and the disappointment. And just, I think that some of that has to be mindset, where you're always chasing the next thing and the next thing. And I think that some of the most uber successful people in this world, that's why you have people who you don't need to work anymore. You would be completely set for life. There's no need to work. And a lot of people would question, well, why are they still working? And it's because enough really is never enough, and they're never satisfied. And whether that's from a self-growth perspective, maybe that's just drive, maybe it's insecurities, maybe it's ego, who knows where that's coming from. But I think that that's why most people who are highly successful in whatever realm that may be is for one or many of those reasons. They're not ever really satisfied. Good enough is never really good enough. And I think that does lead to success, but does it lead to like happiness? Does it lead to purpose, a meaningful life, meaningful relationships? I think that that's where you need to start questioning those things and why you're doing them. And maybe that like your needs and your desires are never satiated from like that internal perspective, but maybe there's other areas of your life that benefit from you taking a step back or trying something else, or finding just a different path towards that. It's tough to say. I think like you have to consider why you're doing all this. And I think that your drive and your wants and your needs in life and what like makes a successful life can be very different than what makes a successful business.
100%. I think having that clear mission is what makes the hard days bearable.
Yeah.
It's like you're reminding yourself as to like why you're doing this.
Other than, I understand you want to build the best houses and like create this product to put you in that world and really like cement NS in that space. But what is the main motivator when you dig deep down to be like, I'm going to take this on and I'm going to do this like every single day? Is it business goals? Is it life goals? Is it both? And what do those look like?
I was asked this earlier today.
The same question?
Very similar.
Damn.
Yeah. And I didn't know how to answer it, and I still don't know how to answer.
You've had plenty of time.
Because it's hard. Like, I want to say, because I think if I your point about deep down, like what is the actual reason? I think that's what trips me up, because at surface level, it's like, I want to build the best homes. I want to build crazy stuff, and I want to work with a team that builds crazy stuff, and I want to ultimately, reward myself and my family financially because of that. I want my team to be rewarded financially. I want to, I want to be known for, building amazing homes and giving back to the industry. And there's all these like things that I want, but it's like, well, but deep down, what is it? Like, what do I really want? And I think when I think about life in general, like deep down, no, I want to be successful. I want to be more than financially stable. I want to be wealthy. I want to have my family live a life that is, full of yeses and little no's. And in doing that, like if I were to ignore what I was doing right now, building homes, like we both know that there's better ways to to
Yeah.
become wealthy and make money. So then it's like, well, then why am I doing this? And then that goes back to like, well, that's what I'm really passionate about. And I think this is where I start trending into this mental state of like, I believe so much in what we're doing that I believe that that is a path to the outcome that I want.
Do you think that business is going to create like that financial freedom or wealth is going to create the lifestyle that you desire?
I do. I think the issue is that I think in my mind it's sooner than it will be.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like what you want in bit and this isn't you, I'm talking me as well here, but what you want in life and in business are so similar, but at the
Mhm.
same time they're so different from each other. And you would think that the way that you set your business up and your life up should be working.
In unison.
Yeah, but they're not, and they're not
It's
coming from two completely different places. They're very similar, but they don't seem to mesh that well.
when I think about it, I think about being on a road and the road is going straight, and as business and life go on, they split
Yeah.
and they get really far apart. And the question is when do they merge back together? And that's like the thing that you can't see.
Well,
It's like you're trending like, because to your point, into the person that asked me earlier, it's like, yeah, I could just do boring stuff and make a ton of money. Like I could go, because we've done all the complicated stuff. Like we do incredibly complicated projects. I could go build excuse me, really simple projects and find a market that could support that and just copy paste them and print and quote unquote print money. But I'm not. I'm like veering off way off path because it's like I want to do this really great thing over here professionally, which I believe if I do it long enough, eventually that road will come back and meet my personal life.
but I find it interesting that your wants and needs from a business perspective and a life perspective, although aligned, create such separation as they grow and move forward. Like I
Mm,
think of right in life, life is about relationships and having meaningful relationships, being with your family, the people who you care about, who you love, right? It's having purposeful work, like what you do on a daily basis. Matters. It matters to your family. It matters to you. I think it's about having freedom and control over your time. It's about growth and progress and every day feeling as though you're in a better place than you were before. And then in business, it's the same, like from a freedom mentality and perspective, autonomy. Like to me, that's a huge driver where I want to run my business on my terms and not my clients or not like the terms of the market. I want to be independent of that. I want alignment, working with my clients, working with subcontractors, teams who value what I do and my standards. I want profitability
mm,
that supports the lifestyle that I want. I want to be recognized for my craft and being respected for my expertise and not just like what we put out. And those things in life and business, they seem the same. Like everything that I just spoke about seems as though they're going to put me on this trajectory that's going to have these two roads that are just going to crash into each other and make this like amazing life. But as you grow and as you want more and as you strive for these things more and more, for some reason those roads, like you say, split and they get further apart. And
mm,
that to me is like the what's most perplexing about chasing those things and trying to find where you belong in life and where you belong in business, and that you have those same wants and needs, but they drive you further from each other. That's the tough thing for me. It's like the more success you want for your business to create more freedom and the lifestyle that you want for your family, the more it pulls you away from your family.
And I think this goes back to the endurance thing where it's like, in theory, if you do something long enough, eventually you'll find alignment, right? Like you just keep pushing through all the shit. Like eventually you'll come back and the two roads will meet again. And I think as they split, like that's what becomes so difficult for people, where it's like, I'm so far off path. This isn't working, and it forces people to question whether they should quit or whether they should just continue to endure this and, and keep trusting the process. It's what I've said for forever. It's like everything that I want to do, has the opportunity to be successful. Anything anyone wants to do has the opportunity to be successful. It's just how much are you willing to endure to make it that? And and like to expand on that, it's not that endurance might be giving up something or changing the course or going backwards for a moment, but eventually like you start walking, you start moving forward again. And it's the same. It's the argument I say all the time. It's like there's nothing wrong with giving up or quitting. Like that's ultimately part of the process. If you stop doing everything entirely, like that's giving up. But quitting or giving up or changing the course, like it's not giving up. That's not failure. That's part of the process in ultimately getting to where you're trying to go. All those difficulties, and I think that's what I continue to remind myself constantly, where it's like, hey, when it's hard, these are the things that need to happen. This might be a big failure. This might really hurt you financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, like whatever it is. Like this is gonna suck, but this is just part of the process.
Do you think that there is a world that you can create a balance between the two, like between life and business?
Well, I think that's the important part in like creating boundaries between, creating boundaries to protect your family and while building a business, because, ultimately there is no work-life balance. I don't believe in it. I believe that one will always suffer, and there will be days that my business suffers and there's days that my family suffers. And outside looking in, it probably looks like my family suffers the most, but inside, I feel as though I balance it to what makes sense. There's days where I would give up my business for more family time, and I was going to say vice versa, but I wouldn't give up my family for more business time. But you understand what I mean. So I think it's creating those boundaries, and as a dad and as a husband, I think it's finding what works for you and making sure that you're there for your family and there for your wife and your kids or your husband, whatever. And I think that is something that I personally certainly struggle with. And I think where most of that struggle comes from is, communicating what I'm doing. That's what I've learned recently, is that, I am someone that likes to hold everything in and work through difficult times and difficulties and I will do whatever I can not to burden someone else with that issue.
Yeah.
Because I know that ultimately I can do this on my own, but I have found that has caused more damage than it has saved, like a relationship or just a simple conversation. It's more damaging to the overall process.
So Nick and myself are excited to announce a new monthly workshop series we'll be holding on Zoom. Each month, we're going to select a topic, a worksheet, or a form from one of our online courses and dive a little bit deeper into it with you. We'll provide the resource and the workshop completely free. All you need to do is sign up for our newsletter at moderncraftsman.co. If you want to be a part of this new journey, Don't miss out. Sign up for the newsletter to get access to these free monthly workshops. Once you're signed up, you'll just need to pre-register for each session. We hope to see you at the next one. Yeah, I think that what we're always working toward with life and with business is to try and create some sort of balance. And I it's the wrong word for it. I don't
Mhm.
think that, like nothing in life is balanced. Nothing in nature is balanced. I think that it's a romanticized term. And I think that a lot of times it leads, like, the chase for balance, perfect balance creates guilt with us, right? Where it's like we're spending more time here or there. And I think that ultimately life a lot of times moves in seasons. And I think that, like, there's parts of my life where I think that I worked way more than I spent time with my family. And there's other parts where I spent more time with my family and then I worked, and each season came with different guilt, whether it's financial guilt,
Mhm.
whether it's emotional guilt. And I think that when you look at it from, like, these need to be in balance, they need to have equal weight. I think that that creates just struggle internally. And I think that it's more, it's not necessarily about distributing them equally as much as maintaining a rhythm between them, where it's like, yeah, sometimes I'll spend more time on this, other times I know I'm going to circle and I know I'm going to pull back, and I'll put the time necessary into this. And knowing when exactly to push and when exactly to pull is somewhat of the key, rather than trying to maintain a perfect balance, because I don't think that that's possible in life, and I don't think that that's possible in business. And I think a lot of it is about just making sure that your needs are met and your family's needs are met, and aligning the needs, not necessarily having them equal each other. Because I think that when you try and find that balance between the two, it's just never going to happen. And I think that it leads to resentment, it leads to bitterness, it leads to guilt, all of which are definitely not productive as we're trying to lead a healthy lifestyle and, build a healthy business with a healthy bottom line. I think that you need to be positive. You need to be working with clarity. And I think that when you're trying to find balance in something that is imperfect and impossible to find a balance, it just doesn't help. Um, is there anything that you've done recently that you feel has been like a step in the right direction to, I guess, blend or marry those two things, like between moving forward and progressing in business while still
Mhm.
progressing towards the lifestyle that you want for your family?
Yeah, I think auditing my time and auditing what I spend my time on, and trying to be as productive as possible. I would argue that, I mean, it's been 2 years now that I kind of really prioritized my health. I think that was something that in my mind I was doing for the betterment of both. Um, and basically to wake up and say I'm going to be the best version of my I can be for myself every day. And I think that was something that, truthfully, I think that that was what was my original stepping stone. And from that point, for the last 2 years, I've consistently audited what I'm doing each and every day and what I'm focused on. And trust me, there's days I'm not productive. I think I had one of those yesterday, and you know when you go home and you just kind of feel like gross,
Yeah.
and it's like, why do I feel gross? And it's like I feel like I didn't really do much today. I had one of those days, despite looking at my calendar and having like 18 meetings. Like, probably got a lot done, but I think generally speaking, it's been auditing my time and making sure that when I'm at work, I am focused on progressing forward. And I would say that the third thing would be spending more time with my team at work to understand what our goals are and make sure that we're all working towards that, and delegating it, right? Spreading it out. You know, we were just on vacation for 2 weeks, and the ability to be there, and I was forcefully not checking in and kind of just allowing things to flow. And, I would interact and answer questions as they came up, but generally speaking, stuff progressed and stuff was moving along. And, things that I typically would chime in on and ask about or be like offer my opinion on, I backed off. Then I came back and someone on my team was like, "Hey, can the four of us sit down? I just feel like we aren't progressing on something, and I want to get everyone's feedback." And I got up from my desk, and in my head I said, "I'm not commenting. I've spent 2 years trying to get this to work. I'm the wrench, and I keep throwing the wrench in the wheel, and everyone goes off and can't make progress. So I'm going to shut up and just let someone else run this." And they sat down, they had a plan, they looked at me, I said, "Sounds good." And now it's progressing faster than it was.
Yeah. It's,
So
go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say, so I think those three things are like in order have been the stepping stones for me to find clarity in the business, which has allowed me to, be more present in clarity, bring more clarity to my home life. And truthfully, on the home side, like, I mean, have a great relationship with my wife and my kids, but it's something that, is I'm looking at personally saying this is a priority for me to make better, be a better husband, be a better dad. Not because I think I'm being a bad one of either, but just seeing opportunity and room for improvement. So making that a priority.
It's funny you were talking about being productive and increasing productivity and how that can help us feel as though we're progressing in life and in business. And I remember speaking with Nate, who we've had on the podcast, who has a military background, and he was talking about like productivity and the difference between what the military wants, which it's done to completion versus done to standard, and how do you distinguish between the two when you get so busy that it feels like, hey, I just want to get all this shit done to completion. I want to check these things off my list. It's decluttering, but at the same time, it, like, for me, that doesn't really help because I'm more of a done to standard where I don't just want to check it off. I want to check it off and make sure it's done well. How do you distinguish between those two?
I think generally speaking, the done to standard is controlled by the fact that we all have a clear understanding of what our standards are, right? And the expectations. And everyone's bought into that, which is huge. But I will say that there's oftentimes where, I want things to be to a certain standard and, and I want to perfect them, but I do oftentimes balance and will lean on, progress over perfection.
Yeah.
And realize that, hey, this one's going to go out. This proposal is going to go out. It's not where we want it to be, but it's progress, and it's better than the last one. And because I think that for a long time, I would prioritize perfection over progress, and what would happen is just we wouldn't make any headway.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happened when someone on my team called that meeting for the four of us. It was primarily related to our post-construction and all the post-construction documentation. I have this grand vision of the book that we hand our client and what it looks like and how they interact with it and the tools that we use to build it. And it's like, all that sounds really fucking cool, but it's just, we don't even have version 1. Let's get version 1 done, because version 1 for the client is going to be a big smile on their face anyway. And when we give them version 2, it's going to be unexpected and it's just going to, and it will be better than the last one.
Yeah.
But instead, for 2 years, we've prioritized perfection, and the first client that we were supposed to give it to, it's literally been almost 2 years since we were supposed to give it to them. And it's like, that's a great example of like, we were prioritizing perfection. Now it's not, the client didn't get anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it could stunt you, and
totally,
you're basically like paralysis by analysis and not getting them anything. I think, even, I don't know, for years, I think that I worshiped being busy, and I worshiped the hustle culture, and I think that it led to actually like stunting my business growth. And I've had the conversation with people before where it's like the more that you slow down, the more successful you'll be. I think that we get to a
Mm.
point in business, we want to be busy, we want all of this work, and then we get there and we don't have the systems in place. What we're defining as success is having those jobs come in, those leads come in, and we get to a point where it's like, oh, this is all we ever wanted, and we say yes to everything, and then we're ill-equipped to handle them, and it creates this hustle culture, where we're somewhat just worshiping busy. And I think that it actually, from like a growth perspective, stunts our growth because we're so concerned with just keeping everything afloat and going from one thing to another, and we're more concerned with completion rather than executing the standard or working on our business or understanding why things aren't working. I think that you don't track what's right and what's wrong with your business, and you don't have the systems in place. I think that once I started putting, like you said 2 years ago, you started putting boundaries on your time and productivity and when you're going to be home. When I started doing the same thing, like for me, it was always my own time. And it wasn't that I was bleeding money, but it was that I was spending all of this time for clients and I wasn't putting my family first and I wasn't putting myself first. And when I actually started putting boundaries on work and the times that I wanted to work and my rates and how I was going to capture my time, it made me realize how inefficient I was being and how much I was leaving on the table, and how, even though people had pricing objections to my work, that my systems were flawed, my business was flawed, and when you look big picture at the numbers, that I wasn't really creating a sustainable model. And I think that the more that I stepped back and the more I prioritized making sure that my systems were right and that my numbers were right and that I wasn't selling a job because I was hungry or because I needed to support or feed a machine, the more profitable my business was, the more successful I was, the more time I could spend on refining my business to actually grow it and make money with it, which was like completely counterintuitive to everything that I had thought before that. But it's like I worship the hustle mentality so much that I was hustling and working 2x what I probably, had I had the right systems, the right clients, and the right numbers, would only have needed to work 1x to make.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that, like, I speak with people all the time where it's like, you're not capturing your time, you're not charging the right rate, you're questioning how you can charge more because you're already having pricing objections. And you can't just say it's everyone else, it's the market. Like, it may be the case, but you have to find a way that you're not over investing and that you're not spending too much time and that you're not working 24 hours a day to work 8 hour to make 8 hour salary. And I think that once you do that and once you become okay with slowing down a little bit, you're actually going to create like a much more profitable business. And at that point, if you want to hustle and you want to work, 16 hours a day, at least you're making an appropriate rate at that point, and you're not doing it just because your head's underwater. Like, slowing down was one of the best things that I was able to do a couple of years ago for my business, to be able to get my life back, to understand that what I was doing wasn't working.
Yeah.
I I took on more and I got busier because I thought that that's what I needed to do to make more, and it just compounded and really like showcased a lot of the inefficiencies of my business. And it wasn't until I was so afraid of slowing down and just being busy. Like, that's all I want. I just wanted to be busy, and I
Mm-hmm.
needed to be busier because I wasn't making enough as is. So busier would make me more money. And it wasn't until I like stepped back and realized like busyness does not mean success, that I started making my money and capturing my time and charging my rates.
When you were describing that, I have this vivid memory of a dream I feel like I actually have often, and it's like I'm driving a car, and I'm going so fast and I'm trying to go, and then I try to go around a corner and I lose complete control of it. And it's like, but then I can't slow down and I'm trying to regain control. And it's just like, it's just getting worse and worse because you're moving too fast.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else has that dream, but it's like, it's one I have constantly where it's like, why don't I just slow down? And as I say it out loud, it's like, hey, that's probably a sign, Nick. Like, hey, slow down a little bit. But that's exactly what it is. It's, you're moving so fast that, like you said, like you were so busy, you had so much going on, you're on the brink of burnout, and it's how do you regain control? And it's just like lift your foot off the gas, regain control, reassess the situation, and you can always get back up to that speed.
Yep.
Right now, like if shit is off, if you're spiraling, like you have to regain control.
You have to find out why you're spiraling. Like instead of just
And you're
saying,
not
I'm
going to
going to
know
do
that unless you
more.
slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, like the hustle culture has always been like, do more, do more, do more, sleep when you're dead. It's like, yeah, all that works when you have a mission and a vision and understand like what you're going for. But you go into a corner at 80 miles an hour and try to take that turn, like you got a pretty good chance of wiping out.
It's also I think you have to really dig into the why of it. And yeah, you want to work that much and you want to create and like have this impact on your family and your lifestyle, but really deep down, why? Is this for you? Is this because money makes you happy? Is this because you think it's going to create freedom down the road? Like we're working so hard to create freedom and complicating things where maybe if you just worked a little bit less and a little bit more intelligently, you might have some of the freedom that you're looking for.
Yeah. So this came up earlier. So question was, why do I work so hard? And exactly what you just said. It's like, well, it's because I want to build a life for my family. I want money to live a life of yeses. I like, and okay, well, it's also selfish. I want to be known for building this stuff. And at one point it was like, well, what about the whole walk before you crawl mentality? I'm like, screw that. Like, I don't know how long I'm on this planet. Like, I'm going to go and build the craziest shit right now when I have the opportunity because I don't want to just do boring stuff and then eventually die and never have said I tried. But on the flip side, it's like, sure, but what if you never get to reap the benefit of doing anything because you're constantly just chasing your tail and you don't actually ever get to slow down and enjoy life? So what you think you're doing this for, I mean, we're getting deep in this conversation, but what you're doing, what you're saying, or what I'm saying I'm doing this for, and the opportunities I'm going after, and I'm comparing it to the fact that, like, I don't know how long I'm on this planet for. I should be applying to the fact that, okay, well, if you don't know how long you're gonna be on this planet for, like, maybe you should consider like shifting down a gear for a minute and enjoying some of the risks that you've taken.
I don't know. I think that so many people are like that, and I'm sure it's so much of our audience, and so much of our audience is self-employed and entrepreneurial, and they want more for themselves. And I see it so often, and it's like what also the other thing that you sent me on Instagram, where it's like you have one person who's going to teach 6 people, who's going to teach 12 people, and it's like I think that we can impact people differently. Like we don't have to do it the same way that everyone else is. And I think that there's a lot of lessons that we've learned, that there's people in our same boat where it's like you don't necessarily have to do more. And yeah, like I know a lot of people who are doing or have done the same thing as us, and they're 75 years old now, and they still like they just always thought they were going to have more time, and it's getting to the point where it's like they still can't slow down because they haven't structured it correctly, and they always just assumed they'd have more time, and at some point this thing was going to run itself and it was going to create the lifestyle that I needed. And it's like, well, you just spent 75 years chasing this lifestyle that you were never actually able to obtain. because of your mentality. And I think that if you were to have just slowed down at some point and focused less on feeding the machine and what actually makes you successful and makes you happy and brings those, like, merges those two roads that you were talking about earlier together, I think that a lot of our listeners could definitely benefit. Like, when I look at impact and big picture, what I can do and what I want out of life and what I want out of business, like being able to help people merge those two roads quicker than I did. And I think that I have done a decent job. Not that I have everything sorted out, but realizing that sooner than other people. I think that I would love to be able to do that more and just have people understand their value and their systems and their businesses and what they can do with their life that doesn't require 80 hours a week out of them.
I think, let's talk about actionable items here, right? So we're talking about this. We talk about the fact that one day it'll all pay off. One day I'll take that vacation. One day, but the reality is I think if you're listening to this and, something we can all take the time and do is define what is enough, whether that's financially, whether that's emotionally, whether that's professionally in the projects that you take on. But I think similar to the way, you run a business, you set these goals, right? You set the budget for the year, you understand like what your targets are for sales, like do that on the family side. How many vacations do you want to take? How much time do you want to spend with your kids? What time do you want to be home? And set some of these things. Define what these goals are, and hold yourself accountable. And and I think by doing that, like there's been rituals that I've certainly implemented on the personal side that I don't skip. Like it's that's I'm doing this. That's the time I have to be there. I'm going to be there. And I think the more you balance all of these accountabilities that you put on the business, you balance the life side and create accountability on the life side, you're going to start realizing, what is important, but also what is enough. How much money do you really need? How much time with the family do you really need? How much time do you really need to spend on the business? That's something that, I mean, frankly, I think can be audited huge.
Yeah.
Like, you go to you're working 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning till 5, 6 o'clock at night. It's like, if you really audited the time that you spent working, was all of that really necessary? Or how much were you doing just to eat up time to finish the day?
Or not getting paid for.
Well, that's even worse.
Yeah. I mean, like, and to provide you guys with some action items and somewhat of a critical path. I think that at the end of the day, most of us, when we look at like the business that we want to create, are trying to create a business that supports a lifestyle, and that they're working together and in unison. And I think creating that freedom. And for me, it's like, Nick, what you said, defining your version of freedom, or your defining what your needs are. How many hours do you want to work a week? How involved do you want to be with the business? How much income do you need? Like you said, vacations. Do you want a business that depends on you or doesn't? And then for me, this has been huge for me, is building a lean, profitable model first. So don't look to scale your business from a numbers perspective immediately. Understand how to charge and capture your time from the get-go, and make sure that once you're capturing all of your time and you're building those systems, whether it's estimating, project management, communication and correspondence, you're doing all of that with a super low overhead and efficient operations that are maximizing your profit. And I think that once you have a handle of that profitability before the volume, then you can start to grow your model. And then the next step for me is to start documenting and delegating some of your low level tasks. What do you want to hand off to people right away as you start to grow and create this business that's going to support your lifestyle for me, it was like the admin tasks, whether it was accounting, bookkeeping, emails, tracking receipts, any of that. If you're hiring somebody to do that, if you are investing in software, but what low level tasks can you delegate to start growing your business, and then standardizing your process, whether it's SOPs. If you can productize part of your business, I think that that's where you'll start making money on employees, where there's systems and processes that they can follow and they can duplicate and they can document and they can start making you money. And then we've talked about this before, but hiring strategically based on roles and not a reaction to something. So don't hire because like you're so overwhelmed with your life that you're drowning. Hire because you're building a system and you need somebody specifically to fit within that machine. And I think that once you start hiring based on the needs that you have as a business, rather than, hey, I'm doing this to keep my head above water, you'll be in a much better place. And then working on your systems, but also the rhythm of those systems. And we're trying to create a business and freedom for ourselves where we don't need to be present 100% of the time. So what's the rhythm of your systems? Is it weekly check-ins with employees? Is it monthly financials? I mean, Nick, you and I, for the podcast, we have weekly meetings. Aside from sitting down and recording podcasts, we also have monthly meetings with Tim on the financial aspect of it. So what are the rhythms of your systems? And then use your growth and the systems that you're creating to buy back the time that's going to create the lifestyle for you, whether it's to be able to work more, whether it's to have hobbies, whether it's to go on vacation, to spend more time on developing your team, whatever that is. I think that you should be working towards growing your business to be able to buy some of that time back, so that you're not having to spend 60, 80 hours a week on the business just to keep it afloat. So for me, that's like the critical path forward as you're growing, to try and keep those two, you're like Nick said, you're heading down this road and it splits. Make sure that split doesn't continue to widen. It comes back together, it merges, and possibly that life and that business are on the same road moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, to summarize what you said, it's like, again, defining the why. Like, why? What are you doing? Write it down, and then understand like what is, like, in every aspect, why you're doing it and what the goals are. Like you said, the accountability of weekly meetings. It's funny you said that, because this morning I texted you like, hey, we still meeting? We didn't have anything to go over. We still hop on the phone. We chat through a handful of things, talk about what our goals are and like what we're trying to accomplish, and then who's doing what. And great, 5-minute call, we're good.
Yeah.
But without understanding like the why, we would waste a tremendous amount of time, and frankly just have no idea if we're actually moving towards a better podcast.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that it's the systems, it's the processes, but then again, it's the cadence and the rhythm of them that's equally as important, right? Where it's like you put all this stuff into place, but if there's not a standard cadence to that, where it's like, yeah, our weekly meeting is at Tuesday at 8:30 a.m. every week, whether we need to hop on or not, that's what we're going to do. And I think that that's really important, as you're trying to structure your business, and just create some freedom and some autonomy within your life and within your business. Yeah.
I got one last question. I'm going to change the tone here, because I want to ask you first, but then I want to ask anyone that's listening the same question, so we can talk about it in a future episode, because I feel like it keeps coming up. But Tyler, when you think about AI and what it's doing or not doing, or you wish it did for your business, what is your take on it? And before you answer, it is something that comes up constantly in my DMs. Anytime I mention it, it's like, I want to understand how you're using it. And for me, all of my free time, like my hobby that we talk about that I don't have right now is learning everything I can about AI and how to leverage it, not even just in my business, but in everything. And in a future episode, I will tell you how AI helped me figure out how to get my daughter to go to sleep, but we'll come back to that.
For me, my entire model and my entire business is it revolves around two things. It revolves around offering a higher level product and service and then creating efficiencies within that, right? I can only put so much work in place. So how do I ensure that I'm maximizing my profitability? And that's done, it's leveraging product and experience to charge a higher rate so I don't have to do as much work, and then creating efficiencies within that again so I don't have to do as much work. So it's not necessarily about increasing top line revenue as much as maintaining top line revenue, and then increasing bottom line revenue through efficiencies. So for me, so much of AI is used just to create a more create economy within all of my systems, right? Whatever I'm doing for a project, whatever ideas I have, I'm hashing all of them out quickly. And then my process in years past and in life past was I'm going to sit there and I'm going to hash out my ideas, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to revise that 3, 4, 5 times, and I'm going to continue to go through that. And it's like every time I continue to go through that, I have to go back to the beginning, and then I'm on revision 2, and then I'm going all the way back to the beginning, and then I'm on revision 3. And so much of AI right now is just helping me go and circle back on my entire process while not having to do 5, 6 revisions in between. So for me, even like my midweeks, whether it's an email to clients, whether it is a process for what I need to submit for something, right? I'm hashing something quickly out on paper. And then what I would normally do is I would spend all of this time refining that and making it perfect. I can now dump that into AI and come out with a more consistent, concise, and comprehensive outline of what I need that's all based on my thoughts. So I'm not prompting AI to generate ideas for me, but more so, here are my ideas. Now refine these and polish these. So it's still all of my ideas. It's just instead of being like scrambled within
The
my
brain
brain,
dump.
yeah, like I can just dump everything out and say refine this, outline this, create it, I guess polish this or make this like a more cohesive
Yeah.
document for me, and then I can go through and I can do one edit on that where I'm not going back and forth. Like when I used to write midweeks, it's like I would write the midweek, I'd review it I'd like 5, 6 times, and now it's like I can just go on and everything that I want to talk about, I type, and then I'm like I dump it into chat and I'm like, hey, polish this for me. And then it'll kick something out, and then I go back through and I'll only have to revise it once or twice more to make sure that everything's in line with my voice, my vision, and it's actually taking the angle that I need. So for me, that's the biggest thing right now, is just maintaining and creating more efficiencies within the back end of my business, which I think most people, that's the most difficult aspect of their business, to capture time anyway. So for a lot of people, it's like if you're bleeding time and money on that aspect of your business, it's a really good opportunity to reduce the liability there.
So I definitely want to get into the future episode, guys. If you're interested in how we utilize AI and just a larger conversation about AI in construction, comment on Instagram on one of our videos and let us know. Just type in AI. I just want to see the interest around it. I'm sure it's big. But I will support what Tyler's saying. I think the single greatest use, especially for like an elementary level, for anyone can do, is exactly what Tyler said, is brain dump your thoughts and have it kind of repeat back to you. One of the, I'll call it a hack that I use, is when I get in my truck, my phone sits in my console and I just turn it on, the voice, and it will I just sit there and talk to it. And yesterday, someone was like, "Hey, we were talking about AI in construction. They were like, I'd really love your thoughts on the top 4 things that you think AI could help with construction." I was like, "No problem. I'll have it to you in an hour." And I had an hour drive, or a half hour drive, and I just turn it on. I'm sitting there. I'm like, hey, someone needs a summary. I'd love for you to just listen to me for like 20 minutes. I'm going to riff on this massive topic and then clean it up and send it to me.
Yeah.
And I literally didn't stop talking for 20 full minutes. And I'm like, the fact that this is just capturing literally everything I said for 20 minutes. And then it was like, yep, got it. So here are the 4 things. I'm going to summarize it, blah, blah, blah. Printed it out. I copied it. I looked at it. Same exact thing. Made a few tweaks. It's like, that's not exactly what I was trying to get at, but here, add to it. Submitted it over. Done. So like the brain dump and like, clarifying and making stuff more concise and also organized, like, chronologically sometimes, where it's like, I have all these ideas, but now put them in chronological order of like how they should be represented.
Yeah. Sequencing it, like to me, like you said, it takes out 2, 3, 4 revisions of what's, to get what's in my head down onto paper, or a system. The dangerous part, I think, is where you start prompting it to come up with or generate ideas that aren't unique to you. So I'm typically, these are ideas that I have or conversations that I want to have that I'm going to brain dump, and then I just want them structured or formatted in a way that makes the most amount of sense, and then I can go and make sure that it maintains my voice, which is a huge help. Just the organizational aspect of it.
Yeah. Guys, we'll talk about this in a future episode. We appreciate you hanging around. Make sure you head over to moderncraftsman.co, sign up for our free newsletter that goes out a couple times a week at this point. A bunch of good information that we're sharing and stuff that is only exclusive to the people that are on the newsletter. So be sure you sign up. Also, Contractor Coalition Summit is coming up in Omaha. Would love to see you guys there. If you guys are interested, head over to contractorcoalitionsummit.com. It's June 19th through the 23rd in Omaha. And if you guys want a discount, shoot us a DM on Modern Craftsman's Instagram page, and we'll get you a discount code and hopefully see you in Omaha. I hear that event's getting bigger and bigger.
Sorry to interrupt, Nick. If you are an alumni, I'm pretty sure that they were offering free access for the first 50 alumni. I don't know where that number stands, so reach out sooner than later.
Yeah. So, and if you're unable to make Omaha, we got one coming up in Chicago in the fall. But if you are able to join us, again, June 19th through the 23rd, contractorcoalitionsummit.com.
Trust my mama, you're no match for my bad karma.